Truth Plus Media.
Welcome to Iconic Sonics. I'm your host, Mike Gastineau. Our show is brought to you today by Rise Above. They're our title sponsor this year, and we love working with them, a nonprofit organization that educates Washington's native youth through sports, and particularly basketball. The show is also brought to you by Epic Seats, trusted local business with tickets to the events you love in Seattle. EpicSeats.com. The Swinomish Casino and Lodge outside beautiful Anacortes, Washington, with a new sports book on the way soon. And Dick's Drive-In Restaurants, great burgers, real Washington potatoes, hand-dipped shakes, and 8 great Seattle locations. Our guest today is one of my all-time favorite players, one of the most thoughtful guys I've ever met. And he's hanging his hat in Dallas these days, but he won't get too far from the 206, as you can see over his shoulder there, because if he ever forgets that he spent some great years up here, he's got a beautiful framed picture of the Pike Place Market. Sam Perkins, great to see you, and thanks for doing the show. How are you, man?
Good. Thanks for having me. In the kind words. It's been good. It's been doing things I normally do, being a dad and hanging out still with the NBA.
Well, and you're working with the NBA. You told me you just got back from a long trip. You were in Albania.
Yes.
It's funny. I mean, we focus on the NBA, and I'm like most people. I focus on what's going on in the league right here, right in front of my face. But the league continues to spring out around the world, and we see it every night in the rosters. I mean, we see so many foreign-born players who have had great success. And you're working with the league to just help bring basketball to really every part of the world, right?
Correct. And they do a good job of trying to brand their the emblem and their name in different countries that we've never been. So Albania, first of all, I didn't even know where it was. I thought I was smart, but found out it borders Italy. So with that said, there was a lot of players there that we looked at and had some camps and visited some community service work like Vision Orphanage and everything. But they do a good job of branding their name.
We mentioned that, you've got the market sign back there. And I mean, obviously you're still connected to this city, and you were just here a while ago. And I don't know if I'm sure it meant a lot to you, but the rush of emotions I think everyone felt to see you and Det and Gary and Sean, together, I'm it's like, oh, I bet those guys hang out all the time. Well, of course you don't. You've gone on and you've got your own lives. So it's a rare thing. And to get 4 of you from that great team together, for the fans, it was a rush of emotions. What was it like for you to get that ovation and to reconnect with the basketball community? What did that feel like?
I mean, it's kind of unexplainable because I got there the same day and left that night. Like I had a jet or something. But I think more so my daughter and family that was with me, sister, were more impressed because of the fact they never saw that. They didn't know that era of time. And right. For those fans to be so indulged and so excited, ecstatic about just having a preseason game, let alone was within itself. Because when we got up there to say our, highs and waves and things like that, it was good to see Gary, it was good to see Detlef and Sean. And it brought back, the times that we had good times in that. Well, it was reunion. You couldn't tell it was reunion anymore, but I didn't know. I got lost. I didn't know my way around there anymore because it looked so different. But it was an exciting night. I thought maybe it would be more engaging if they had announced something, but maybe a team was coming there. But overall, the whole experience, seeing everybody, seeing you all, and seeing George Karl especially. Took the cake because I hadn't seen him in a while, and he has done so many things, came to him that was warranted, and I wanted to see him especially.
I got to thinking about you and George. When did you first meet? Because, those Carolina guys, they're coming back all the time. So I don't know if he was back when you were a player there in the early 80s or if you crossed paths with him then. When were you and George first introduced?
Really, it was a time where he traded for me.
Really?
And, yeah, because I never saw him. I saw a lot of guys like Larry Brown, Cunningham, these guys previous, but I've never actually met George Karl. Now I knew of his legacy, but at Carolina, but I never actually met him. And then for him to want me from trading me to Seattle from LA, it was I was wondering like why, but but it found out that he was a Carolina great, and that's how we connected. And when I met him on that bus, I think it was in Sacramento. When I first got traded, that's when I met him.
That's interesting because it would have made sense that maybe you could have met earlier, but that's when you come in to join a Sonics team. You're leaving LA. You've had such an interesting career because you did great things everywhere. You're in Dallas for a while and have some great memories there. LA, you got to the NBA Finals. Seattle, you get to the NBA Finals. Indiana, you get to the NBA Finals. I'll ask selfishly, and you're on a Sonics podcast. Do you consider like Seattle your premier NBA home, or do you have is it like kids? Like I got love for all four of the cities.
Well, yeah, I do have special moments, but Seattle was more. I was just thinking about that before you had me on. I think Seattle was more or less where I got acclimated to the community because I've, not only, playing ball for a team there where the fans were fabulous. I got also acclimated in the city and actually did what I had set out to do, is try to enjoy music and produce music, bring some events there and things of that nature. And along the lines, took some friends along and made it special. And so, it always rained there, they always say, but I ducked and dodged the rain and didn't mind it. But the rain was good because it brought a lot of chemistry to us, and we had a cohesive team, and we had nothing else to do to take our minds, off basketball. So, and that's why I started reading. So it helped a great deal because of the weather. So we had some pluses up there.
That's interesting. I've had musicians up here that have told me that they think so much music came out of Seattle because of the rain, because they're in it. What are you going to do? You just sit down in your basement or in your garage and you play music and you fool around and you record stuff. Same thing. That
right.
It's an odd way of looking at rain, but that it forces you to maybe do something, either that or just sit and watch it rain. And who wants to do that?
Yeah, it did. And so when I got there, I lived in a hotel for a minute, and then I found a place. But as you were mentioning, like musicians and other people of other genres, they do things besides. And I found time. I was running in LA. I tell you the truth, I couldn't sit down. But when I got to Seattle, I sat down and started thinking about a lot of good things.
You had an interesting perspective, I'm assuming, because you got to LA and it's right at the end of showtime. Kareem is gone. Magic's still there. A lot. Worthy's still there. A lot of great players. You guys get to the finals the first time the Bulls win. So a very good team. And then they're on the slide a little bit. Now you get to Seattle. It's a different thing. It's not the end of anything. I could tell at least by 92, 93, things were beginning. Could you feel that when you came in here that like, hey, this team is on the rise and is going to be good for a while?
Well, I played against them in LA, and I thought they were a real complete team. They had everything. So when I first came to the team, I was wondering, like, why do you want me? Because they had so many people: Ricky Pierce, Dana Barrows, Derek McKee, Gary, Michael Cage. Yeah. So I'm like, why? Where am I fit? But Coach, the way Coach played the team, he played outside in. He never really had a post player, and with the things that I was doing, he just told me to start working on threes and making sure that you do your job and take care of the middle, blah blah blah. But the thing is about it is that he helped my career go even further because of the fact the way they played and the team chemistry. So when I got up there, I mean, it was like a team that I settled in real quick, just as if I was there already. But we had some good times up there, good wins, some bad losses. But the thing is that George Karl was the conduit to the whole scheme of things. And I just got acclimated after the first year and just never looked back.
You watch the game today, and it is not unusual at all to see a big guy launching a three. And I'm not kidding you, Sam. I see a big guy launch a three, and somewhere in my mind, I think that's Sam Perkins. I mean, I don't know if you were the first guy to do it, but it was different. And I really give George credit for seeing what your game was and saying, we are going to get this guy and he's going to be impossible to defend, because if they tried to put a big guy on you, you could get around him. If they put a little guy on you, you could go down low. Was there any hesitancy on your part? Like, all right, I'm going to shoot more from out here. I mean, most guys want to shoot anyway, but you know what I mean? This was a different thing in 1993.
No, I think what I tried to do everywhere I went was try to be a difference, try to be consistent more than anything. And so with LA, I was only there for 3.5 years or so, but I tried to be a difference maker, and we had some good results. And then we had the bad news with Magic. But at the same time, when I got to Seattle, I just wanted to make a difference and make sure that this trade was worthwhile, made it worthwhile. And George Karl, just talking to him, and since he was a Carolina guy, I just talked to him a little bit, and he knew the philosophy, and I knew where he was coming from. So I worked on that three. Larry Bird told me you only need one, make one to make a difference. And so I tried to make 3 or 4 of them to be a difference. And but the thing is just that it propelled me into a whole nother scheme of things and fit in with Ricky and Eddie Johnson and Derek McKee and Rain Man and Gary and Detlef. I mean, we all had a responsibility. We're all different individuals, but we came together because of George Karl, like you said. But first got up there with the 3. I look at everybody doing it now, and it's not a novelty anymore. It's more or less now you just shoot it and you go up there and throw your 3 hands up like this, and that's it. Ours was strategy. So more or less, it's pretty much the same.
I got a clip of, I think you took 13 threes one night against Golden State. And I'm like, that's like the first quarter for guys now, it's nothing. Do you think that by embracing this and George bringing it up and you said, I'm going to be more of a perimeter guy, more of a 3 guy, did that lengthen your career in the NBA, do you think?
I think so, because I was inside a great deal. Everybody knows I was shooting threes, but when I was in Dallas, I was a 4 or 5 or something like that. And I didn't mind it at all. But so I was inside out. At times I was inside with Seattle, but mainly because we had big dominant men like Hakeem and Mark Eaton and David Robinson, these guys. You wanted to pull them from the basket so that Gary can get a fast break, opportunity, or our players can get fast break opportunities. But it seems like when they pulled the big man out, he forgot about me, and he's there underneath the basket protecting it as you told to do.
Right.
And all I had to do was just kind of concentrate and hit that 3. The hardest 3 is wide open, being wide open.
Why is that, do you think?
I don't know, because now everybody expect now that you have your opportunity and all you see is rim. Like sometimes I would be, tell you the truth, I was laughing on some of those because of the fact I saw my man's face. I saw a keen face or somebody's face coming at me, and they forgot that split second that I was outside, and they down there protecting the rim.
Did anybody ever say anything to you like, hey, big man, what are you doing out there at the 3? Get down here with me where you're supposed to be.
There was a coach that I played against in Rudy Tomjanovich. Yeah. And he would be sick every time he saw me open, because most of my shots came from over on his side of the bench at the first half or whatever. But at the same time, he got so mad at his players, he got mad at me because of the fact I was just wide open in Houston or in a situation, and he was like, "That's not fair. That is not fair." You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, that's how it happened, and it was good trying to strategize against some guys.
You guys had a remarkable run in the mid-'90s, the '94 Denver series. We still talk about it. George relives it, I think, all the time. I mean, maybe it's time to let it go, but it was such a disappointing thing. And the Lakers series the next year. Now suddenly it's '96, and you're again an elite team, but you're in the first round and you're in trouble against Sacramento. You remember you guys split the first 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
Sean misses the first game because he had gotten in a fight the last game of regular season. So he misses, you guys win. He goes back for game 2. You guys lose. Now you're in Sacramento. It's game 3, and you're down double digits in the fourth quarter. Do you remember a lot about that game and that night? Because it felt like, oh boy, here we go again.
Yeah, I did. And for some reason, I wasn't even worried. I don't know why. Like, I was probably more concerned about the Denver game because nothing seemed to go our way. They had a good game plan against us, and they just outdid everything, for themselves. But with that Sacramento team game, yeah, like you said, Sean missed the first game, and we thought maybe, okay, this is a good thing, good omen because of the fact we won without Sean. But that series again, I wasn't too concerned. We kind of came together and did our thing. But from the outside looking in, yeah, I'm sure everybody was thinking this is going to happen one more time. But we came together, and somehow we pulled it out.
Frank Burkowski and Hawk each hit big shots in that fourth quarter. And the funny thing was, I've talked to both of them on this show, and Brick had a real good point. He says, yeah, we knew what had happened, but he goes, you got to remember, Hawk and I were new. We didn't care about Denver. We didn't care about LA the year before. We were new, so it didn't bother us. I wasn't worried about it, and I was relaxed.
Right.
Then I have Hawk on, and I lay it on him, and Hawk goes, oh, I was worried. I was scared to death, man. I thought it's going to happen again. So everybody obviously brings a different set of emotions and thoughts to it. But winning that series, it felt like a champagne cork coming out of a bottle, because then you leveled Rudy Tomjanovich in Houston 4 straight. And then you play in that epic series against Utah. But it felt like the Sacramento series just kind of, it opened the floodgates for how great this team was. And there suddenly was no pressure anymore. It was more just, you guys are getting it done.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and to Hershey's point, I mean, I'm sure it had some similarities in the games, the series we lost to Denver, but I'm telling you, for me, I wasn't really concerned. I thought really we were down double digits, as you mentioned, but I really felt that we were going to overcome that because we had such a big disappointment in the Denver series, and then coming through that Western Conference, I thought this is a year that we would prevail and try, and we learned our lessons. So we had to tighten up, and I don't think we took for granted Denver, but Denver just was so hyped against us that we thought we were going to win that series easily.
Yeah, and there's so much about that series, the long stay in Denver, and you guys came back. There was, Ricky and Gary getting the argument. There was just a whole lot of weird things, just bad timing stuff that happened. And I think everybody involved would like to have a do-over with that. If only you could have do-overs in pro sports, huh?
Yeah, we could have, we should have, we would have.
Yeah. So, hey, you touched on this earlier, but as you guys are going to the finals in '96, you're in, Key Arena is brand new. Seattle is buzzing, music's happening, computers, coffee, beer, everything's happening out of this city. And you touched a little, what was it like? Like, what's the coolest thing that happened to you? I know you did a couple of different day-long music festivals. You had a show on Cube. There was just so much happening, and the Sonics were at the center of it all. They were the hot sports team, and the Mariners finally got going. But what was some cool things that maybe happened to you, either because of basketball or even outside of basketball?
Well, every time I go to Seattle, everybody mentions that particular year. I mean, because that was a ticket that everybody went to. Now, as a player, I didn't know that was the feeling, that everybody had. I mean, the bars was full. Queen Anne was popping. Pagliacci's, everybody needed a pizza slice or something like that. And I mean, everything was just on flight. But the thing is that even still now, some people, because of the NBA took away at the team, it seems like it makes that era or that time even more precious because of the fact that we just did so many good things for the city, and it was a buzz, and that place was packed. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like an arena type where it is like it is now, like the climate. But at the same time, they got in there, and you had people in there that I guess they weren't movie stars of Hollywood, but they were Seattleites that were very influential. And so with all that said, I think it made us even have more gratuity within the community, like putting on shows, having music, having a personality on in another way, access on Cube 93, playing music, just going places and making it, you know, like special. And so with that said, I had a great time. I mean, it just promoted so much positivity from players for a change, instead of having something, you know, deterrent, you know, come to somebody's personality. And so with that said, we all took care of our business. Detlef, I love Detlef. I love Sean and Gary, Cage. We all had a different perspective and brought that perspective to the court. And Hershey, I mean, throughout the line, going through each team, we all had good players and good people. So it made it even more special.
I always thought, and I tend to lump Sean in with Gary and George, and Sean wasn't quite as emotional, and you know, George and Gary could just get way out there on the emotional scale, which was good. It's why they were great. And meanwhile, you had over here you and Det and Nate. You guys were kind of the yin to the yang, and say, look. And I'm wondering how often that either came up or you discussed it. Like, all right, you know, Sam, you know, you were called Big Smooth for a reason. I mean, you were a big smooth guy. Everything's fine, guys. Calm down. And how often or did you like have to go with Gary and say you got to rein it in, because that was part of his game. But he and George also, they could get to where they were almost being destructive to each other.
Yeah, that always came up with Gary and George Karl. I couldn't understand why they were going at it, but I understand, you know, looking back on it, I do understand why George Karl was so pensive on Gary, because of the fact he needed Gary to be at the games. He needed Gary to lead, because he was our leader. And there was so much responsibility on a guard such as he. And he's come out of it, you know, looking like, you know, the good Samaritan, because he's the Hall of Famer, he's the glove, he's an icon, things of that nature. But because of the different personalities and the yin, the yang, as you say, that's what made it special. I mean, when we had to talk about each other in the locker room, we had to get on each other a little bit, just a little bit. I mean, in my calm manner, I mean, I had to get on somebody. But the thing is just it wasn't the loudness or the screeching of a George Karl talking to a Gary, or Sean missing practice and no excuse. And so we had to ring some people in and make sure that, you know, we on the same page, because if you're not on the same page, then we got some problems. And so we had to make sure that the guys like Nate, Detlef, myself, Frank, you know, and Hershey, we had to make sure that this team was, you know, on point. And so we had to collectively have fun in practice. And when guys didn't feel like practicing, you know, there was times I didn't feel like practicing, but I made it a habit to just go ahead and make sure I did what I did, and rein somebody else in that like Gary didn't want to practice. And we all colluded on the sideline, I mean, on the court, and said, we're going to get Gary to practice today because he don't feel like it. So we had a fun 3-on-3 or whatever. He wanted to come in, and you know how he talks. He boasts like, I bust your behind or whatever. We finally got him to practice just on that little stuff. And so that's how we were. And, you know, Gary had a vocabulary that was interesting, but we teased him, and we made it so much fun to the point where when it came to the games, we were all in sync, and that was a special thing about us.
So Gary would see you guys having some big three, and he'd, I want to be in that. And you're, well, you're not
right.
practicing. No, I want to be in.
We would talk junk to each other. We had a guy by the name Dave Wingate. Yeah. And Wingate, Wingate, we didn't let Wingate, but Wingate was hitting everything one particular time, and on a 3-on-3 or whatever it was. And the thing is that Gary wanted to be part of it but he didn't practice that day, and he just wanted to jaw and talk all he wanted. And so eventually we didn't pay him no mind. And then he was like, let me show you. And we were like, come on in here then. He took, you know, so I mean, we had to do mind games with Gary, to get him to practice. But as long as he practiced and was involved that particular day, George Karl didn't say anything because we took charge in that sometimes, and sometimes it was good for us to do that because George Karl was probably winding down, tired of arguing with him, because the more he resisted, I mean, the more George Karl was adamant about it, more Gary was resisting.
Yeah. Sean Kemp told a great story back when we did a show at Dick's Drive-In Restaurant in Queen Anne. Sean said there was one time where Gary and George had really gotten into it, and they'd been separated. They'd gone off into separate corners, and Nate, I think, is with George, and Sean is with Gary. And not knowing each other, they both said the same thing. Nate says to George, "You know why you and Gary don't get along? It's because you're exactly alike. You're the same exact guy." And George,
exactly.
Like, "Oh, bullshit, that's not true." And
exactly.
And Sean is saying to Gary, "You don't get along with George because you're the same guy." And Gary's like, "No, I'm not." So like George is like, he wants to trade Gary. Like, nobody's trading anybody. Calm down. But they really were. I mean, Gary was an extension of George.
And that is so true now. Looking at that, they were so hot-headed that if you look at George Karl's career as a player, he was a feisty, antagonistic player who was always in trouble, always making trouble. And Gary is the same way in his own way. Modern day, was always doing something too, talking back or doing something resisting. I don't feel like playing. I was like, F you then. I'm like, and George Karl just said F you too,
Yeah, right.
So they were similar in so many ways that after a while they kind of calmed down and realized, like, let's do a do-over. And probably one of the best relationships in the NBA.
All right, part two now with Sam Perkins on Iconic Sonics. Our show is brought to you by Simply Seattle, the biggest Sonics apparel store in the world. That Sonics sweatshirt over my shoulder there is a Simply Seattle product. You can get 15% off your order with the code ICONIC15 at simplyseattle.com. And brought to you by the legendary Edgewater Hotel. The Edgewater, the official hotel of Sonics fans everywhere. I mentioned earlier, Sam, you played on three teams that went to the finals, three different teams: the Lakers in 91 against the Bulls, the Sonics in 96 against the Bulls, the Pacers in 2000 against the Lakers. Which of those three do you think was best? They were all interesting teams, all good enough to get to the finals. Who was the best of the three?
It's funny. I must have been the difference.
That's right. Of course you were.
Nah. Man, they all were special because they were each team was, except for LA, was trying to get over the hump. And I say that because Indiana was trying to get past the Knicks for years, or Chicago.
Right.
They were trying to get over the Knicks, and they had, they came close. LA, of course, had to deal with, Showtime was over. And now new guys like Utah and Portland was on the rise. We upset Portland. I think we weren't high seeded I think that year, and we beat Portland, and we made it to the finals. So with Seattle, it was a drought because of the fact that they haven't won since 79. Right. And so with that said, coming out of that conference, you could pick them, really. You could have picked Houston. You could have picked Utah. And Utah finally went, But the thing is, it was Seattle's turn, and I really think I enjoyed the Seattle one because it was so competitive each night. I felt like I was still a Laker because when I was on the Laker team, teams came after us every night, wanting to beat us. I simulate that with Carolina. When I was at Carolina, everybody wanted to beat us, and if they did beat us, it was a rush to the floor. And I felt that way with Seattle because we had so many adversities with John Stockton and a Karl Malone, or Akeem and Charles Barkley, or the San Antonio Spurs, or David Robinson and Park. It was just a long list of people that wanted to beat us because we were so good. And as you can see, when Denver beat us, it was like joy to the world, Christmas for them. But I really enjoyed my time with Seattle because it was special with a lot of guys, and you felt part of the team, and you did whatever I could to make it special with these guys. There was not one guy I did not argue with or didn't like. From Steve Scheffler all the way to McAvey. Steve was he was the team favorite. But it was one of those teams where I got along. I could hang out with anybody on that team and not worry about, being awkward because of the fact that we were that close.
You had interesting Mike Dunleavy's the coach in LA when you get to the finals. Then George is here, and then Larry Bird in Indiana is your coach when you get to the finals. And you played for Isaiah the next year. Isaiah Thomas comes in and replaces Bird. That's an interesting change here. What was Bird like as a coach? I don't think he ever enjoyed it. He talked about, it was tough for him to sit on the bench, and yet the Pacers had some great teams under him. What was he like to play for?
Man, he was great. I mean, he made us practice. He made us practice like he was in Boston. I remember him telling me one time, or remembering how he practiced in Boston. Like he was always the first one there, didn't want to leave. But at the same time, he made that team practice. And he says, you got to practice if you want to beat everybody. He also told me that when I was playing as a rookie, the only game he was concerned about was the Lakers. Everything else was a warm-up, was a scrimmage to him. So he played the Lakers that weekend, the game after us, and he was like, "Man, I didn't worry about you all because y'all were just a warm up to the game that I was about to be ready for. That was magic." And I was like, "Man, he just cut me. Let's just like that." But that's how he practiced, and so he was an avid fan of practicing, and so Rick Carlisle was the guys with the numbers and everything, but Larry Bird stood there. Was his presence was probably like just for us to be really straight and narrow, and always look towards the games because of the fact that that's all he wanted to do was compete. And if he couldn't compete himself, he wanted to compete through us. And every time he told me, like I just mentioned before, he said, all you got to do is make one to be the difference. And so with that said, he drilled me in practice every time, and I had to shoot at least 200, 250 shots before I left the threes with him. I was down there with the big men. Next thing you know, he says, "Come down here." And next thing you know, I was like, "Oh my God." But that's the kind of guy he was. That's the guy. I liked him a lot. I still keep in touch with him.
You mentioned earlier, I'll go back to your Laker days, 91, you guys go to the finals, then fall of 91, the next season, you're getting ready to get rolling. I don't know, I think the season had started, maybe, or it was just getting ready to start. And the world was shocked. You mentioned it earlier. It was stunned. Irvin Johnson, Magic Johnson, steps up and says, "I have the HIV virus, and I'm going to have to step away from basketball." And all of us, I mean, I remember it real clear because I was just starting my career as a talk show host, and that day was interesting. You had people calling the show, educating me. A lot of us didn't know much about what we were talking about. And I'd never heard this phrase before on the radio. Certainly, I had guys call me saying, "Mike, I'm gay. I've got HIV. This isn't a death sentence anymore. The doctors have made some advancements." We were all trying to figure out what was going to happen. What was it like from inside? What was it like as a teammate? And I'm assuming you loved playing with Magic. And I mean, everybody liked Irvin, likes Irvin, I should say. What was that like to go through from your perspective?
Well, I'm going to try to set it up and be as short as possible. But we were practicing at Loyola Marymount, and we getting ready I don't think we had a game or anything like that, but we just finished practice. Mike Dunleavy called us in. And before we went out to get our shots up, he told us to come in real quick. And he says, "Just drop everything. We got something to express later on, but be at the forum at 1:15 or whatever it was, 3:00. And he says, "Just go straight home. Don't do anything else, but go straight home." So, okay. So we leave practice, and not knowing what was going on. We get to the arena and we sit in the locker room for almost like 45, 50, almost an hour before anybody jumps off. Finally, Mike Dunleavy comes in and he says, well, probably some of you know, maybe not, but he told us that Magic acquired the HIV. We were like, what? I mean, the thoughts are running through your head like crazy because of the fact, like, we didn't know any much about it, and it was harder to get it from one gender to then another. And then Magic comes in, and then the press conference comes, and he tells the world, and I think you probably saw that, and
Sure.
He said he had to retire. So, but before then, real quick, before we came from Utah, he wasn't on that trip. For some reason, he wasn't on that trip, and we came. I think we lost to Utah. And then we came back and practiced, and then that's when everybody was told to go home. So it was strange because, and I tell you, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but some of the other guys and myself, after we went home, we didn't eat anything, and because of the long afternoon, we decided to go to TGI Fridays. Mm-hmm. And I remember driving with the top down. When that news came over and we left there, LA turned black. It was like from almost summer, spring to back to winter, because the whole night went pitch black. And it got so dark because of a rainstorm coming. And so we thought that was a sign. We was like, man, maybe this is a sign or something. I was like, I don't know. But we started talking about it, and we didn't know that there was a litany of players that didn't want to play against him after that, and things of that nature. And all of a sudden, we had to get educated. So the NBA volunteered some of us to go to Johns Hopkins and to learn about the virus. And I was one of the participants for the Lakers and understood a little bit more. But it was so strange because no one ever thought a player of that caliber, even if it was somebody lesser than him, or a bench role, a role player, would they gave him the same, attention. But be as it may, it was him, and our mouths just dropped, and the team took a turn for the worse.
Yeah, I mean, it had to be. It was shattering for everybody. I remember saying that day on my show, I said, because, again, you think this is 91. There was still
Right.
a lot of mystery about that, about the disease, about the virus. And I said, but one thing we don't have to say anymore, because you would hear part of the casual conversation about it was, well, I don't know anybody who has AIDS. I don't know anybody. And I said, after today, everybody knows somebody who has AIDS, because everybody knew Magic. I say
Right.
He was one of these guys, even if you didn't like him, even if you were in that rivalry, you were more of a Bird guy than a Magic guy, you loved Magic's game. I mean, we all knew it. And, the fact that here it is all these years later and he's still with us, and the doctors and the researchers who were, that thing was so scary. And when he announces it's like, this is going to be horrible watching this thing ravage him. And instead, the only, I don't want to say a good thing about it, but the timing of it, at least they had gotten ahead of it a little bit. And as you found out, I'm sure when you went to Johns Hopkins, that there were things that could be done to make sure a person could live with this.
Right. And so you mentioned that everybody knew about it. So the only way we thought that it could have been, transpired was to get it from drug related.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody was like, well, this man doesn't do drugs or sharing needles or doing things like that. So it was more depth information that we needed to hear. And that's why John Hopkins stepped up. And then all of a sudden we thought it'd be because of a cut, saliva. I mean, the craziness, all the crazy things that were going around, the conspiracies that were going on, we just didn't know. And so we had to educate ourselves, and then it turned out to be something that some players accepted. He played in the All-Star game, as you know.
Right.
And, he was I believe he was the MVP.
Yeah.
Things of that nature. So, I mean, good for him, but everybody at the same time was looking at, well, what about me? I have AIDS. I got a 10-year window and I'm dying like tomorrow. And so they thought he may had special medicines over in Africa or wherever overseas. So, I mean, it was a good and bad type thing because people were dying and they wanted the same medicines that Magic was taking.
Right. And it's amazing. Magic is still with us and healthy and vibrant. And, again, it's like any disease. It's unfair. There's cruelty to anything like that. But that was a stunning day. You mentioned that you've stayed in touch with Larry Bird a little bit with Magic. Do you talk to him much?
Yeah, I see Magic every now. I see Magic only at the All-Star games because I visit his suite. And I'm sitting in my little, peon seat across from him. So I go in his suite to sneak a peek and stuff like that, say hello to him and his wife and friends. And but Larry Bird, I call every now and then. I called him about the time where Florida had just had that little hurricane that blew everybody's house down. The wolf came and blew everybody's house down. And he lives in that area somewhere in Florida. And so I just wanted to make sure he was okay. And he was like, thanks for calling. But I talked to him because he hired me in Indiana. So with that, I'm grateful that he did because I did inquire about business side and sat in his office a great deal because my office was not right across from him. So I went in there and I knew he wasn't doing anything. So after I got through the cloud of smoke of cigarettes, I finally took off my gas mask and had a conversation with him. We talked about basketball and business stuff like that.
And then the other guy, you played with a lot of great guys, but I mean, you played with a guy who got drafted right ahead of you in that legendary '84 NBA draft, which is, Hakeem is number one, Sam Bowie, and, the Blazers get a bad rap, but if Sam had stayed healthy, he was going to be a good player.
Yeah.
Some guy named Jordan goes third, and then Big Smooth goes fourth. Did you and Michael, do you have a relationship with him? Do you stay in touch with him?
Yeah, I do. And I saw him, last time I saw him was at the Legends brunch, and he came to it. And I had the NBA ask for my assistance to try to get him there because he's such an icon. You see the bottom of his planes all the time, but you actually never see him when he's in the air. He's on a golf course. And I'm not a golfer, to tell you the truth, but as he is. But the thing is, they wanted his presence there because of the fact that he was going to be the next, I think he was going to be the next GM of hosting a All-Star game.
Right.
So with that said, I tried to call him, and he would never answer his phone. I'm like, I can't believe this man is not answering his phone. But, I guess I have to be on that same plateau to reach the real number. And figured it out. But he finally came, and he was like, you better thank your man Sam Perkins over there because of the fact he kept bugging me. I said, so this man actually did get my messages and stuff like that. So with that said, yeah, we talk, we see each other maybe at Carolina, maybe a few times, but being that he's in the NBA, still affiliated with the team, and I'm on the consultant side, we just see people that we know, like a Buzz Peterson. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
But he works for Charlotte as well. So I talked to Buzz a great deal and mentioned to say hello.
That 82 team, I mean, it's amazing the amount of talent that was on that team, and you win the national championship, the first one for Dean Smith. He'd go on to win others, but I mean, Dean had that thing on him at that time. Like, well, he can't win the championship. And then the year before, you guys had lost to Indiana, your freshman year, I think.
Yeah.
What was it? All these years later to win an NCAA championship, it's got to be the greatest feeling in the world. And then when you think, hey, we were the first guys to get it done for Dean, for Coach Smith, that must be a great memory for all.
Man, I mean, just the way things are, you just can't believe it. Some people say it's meant to be, but we were just very fortunate in that game because Georgetown was a good game. Matter of fact, that Final Four was one of the best Final Fours compiled up with teams, Houston and us, Louisville. And so with all that in Georgetown. So with that said, there was a lot going into that tournament because, as you mentioned, Monkey was on his back, And is he the greatest ever with so much talent he has? You know, Mike Corrin to Bob McAdoo to Willie Davis, Kupchak. I mean, he had a slew of people. And Al Wood, and we lost. I wish we would have won it for Al Wood in '81, but Indiana just kind of came out in the second half, and I'm gonna blame it on Reagan because I'm gonna have to put some stuff on Reagan. I don't know. He might have been an Indiana fan at the time, but overall in '82, it was a challenge to get back, and just like the Denvers and the Sacramento, we had to play James Madison or somebody, and we found ourselves, you know, in a nutcracker. So, but it was good. It was good to come out of that '82 championship because it was my first. It was coach's first, and I was so happy for my senior Jimmy Black, and because he's the one who led our team, and there were so many things he had to go against as far as negative press and things that he couldn't shoot and things of that nature, that he had to overcome a lot. And so with him and Dean Smith and Coach Guttridge and Eddie Fogler, these guys made it. And we made it too. And it was probably one of the best series of a game that I ever been involved in at my young tenure at the time, because of the fact that it was against it was against Georgetown, it was against Pat Ewing, it was John Thompson, and don't forget we had Akeem Olajuwon in that Final Four, but he was raw. He wasn't a shake. He wasn't a shake yet, dream yet, but he was Akeem Olajuwon for sure. But the thing is just that college was different, and you know, you experienced 4 years of growing up, and you grew up, and I mean, it makes you grow, you know, regardless of whether you won or lost. And I say that because Fred Brown, who turned it over, he had to grow up. He had to get hit a whole lot before they came back and won it. So things turn around if you stay with it, and so college makes you grow up a great deal real quick.
I'll mention that in '81, I think you noticed I was a junior at Indiana, and President Reagan was shot the afternoon of the championship game. Fortunately, was not mortally wounded. I'm not proud of this, Sam, but I'll tell you, all my friends, our first reaction was, the president was shot? They're not going to cancel the game, are they?
They thought about it.
Yeah, they did, and you know, and then they end up playing it, and Indiana wins. But you guys would get yours the next year. In kind of going through this legend thing before we get out of it, and before we say goodbye to you, one of the things I'm talking to guys about this year, and I don't know, everybody knows this name. Bill Russell left us this past year. You know, maybe as great as anybody who played the game. You certainly look at what he did and what he accomplished in his career. And then he ends up living a lot of his life in Seattle. Did you cross paths with him much? I said when we started this, I thought you were one of the most thoughtful guys I ever covered. You thought about things and how to get involved in community and all that. Did you get to know Bill Russell at all at any time in your life? Get to spend any time with him?
Oh, every chance. I mean, I crossed paths with him on the bus rides. Him and Oscar Robertson were on the same bus one time. And I didn't know really what to say to Oscar because he was so standoffish, like almost, but that's just his facade. But Bill Russell was, on the other hand, a whole nother personality. So I remember this the first time he said, "What's up, Purvis?" And I was like, "What?" So, you know, I'm not going to correct him because, you know, he's the NBA, you know. And so with all that said, so I saw him again as funny as I say, I'm not a golfer, but I saw him at a golf tournament, and I'm sitting at the same table with him. And I said, well, I'm gonna go straight to him and sit down with him. And he looks at me and he goes, "Purvis." I was like, "What's up, man?" He said it again. Now there's some time in between. So I'm like, he did it again. So finally, I go back and we're in a whole nother scene, and he comes to me. He goes, "I owe you an apology." I said, "For what?" He says, "I've been calling you Purvis for all this time, and your name is Perkins." And I said, "Man, don't even worry about it, man." So that's how we started. started. So every time I should have called him something else like Chamberlain or Wilt.
Yeah.
He probably would have got mad at me. You know what I mean? So, but yes, I got to know him a lot because we were together at sometimes and on the same trips or community borders or something like that. Basketball Without Borders, and I got to know him a great deal. And I've never seen him in Seattle, but I always saw him in a whole different city or another state of mind as far as on different events in the NBA. But I enjoyed his company every time because he was funny, always telling jokes. But as you can tell, dementia started creeping in and things of that nature. So we always had to make it live for him because I always wanted to talk about how was it like or how was it or how this, so that he can now start talking and remembering about what his career was like. And every time I saw him, I tried to get something out of him just because, you know, who was his hardest competitor? He would always say Wilt was, how was coaching and being a player at the same time. So I always was trying to be thoughtful about his career and trying to get to know these guys. But for Oscar, I couldn't ask him anything because
Really?
It's just he wouldn't answer. You know what I mean? He was like, "Man, why do you know who I am? You know, why are you talking to me?" And I introduced myself. I said, "I'm Sam Perkins. I know who you are." I mean, I'm like, "Okay, cool. Calm down. Calm down." I'm not asking for any money, anything. I'm like introducing myself. So, I mean, it was good because I interact with a lot of guys, a lot of legends, and now that I'm on the RPA side, I get to see Archie Clark and guys like that. So
Wow.
I can, you know, have a conversation with them.
You should have told Oscar that you were Purvis Ellison. See where that. I'm gonna have a hard time not calling you Purvis the next time I see you. I got to be honest about this.
I swear. I mean, it was the funniest thing because I would never say nothing. They said, "Why don't you correct him?" I said, "Do I look like I'm somebody supposed to correct this guy? Come on, man. He can call me anything he want, you know."
Well, before we let you go, we touched on a little bit early on, and you know we're very hopeful up here that things are moving towards the team coming back. There's an arena now that's certainly NBA ready. You saw that the other time, a month ago, when you were in town. Great crowd for that game. The fan base is here. It feels like politically things are moving in the right direction. What would it mean to you? How big a gap is it for you not to have a team up here, and what would it mean to get one?
Well, when they talked about when I'm always in meetings with, or Adam Silver has his presence, he's always talking about two teams. You know, you don't want to expand with just one. So when they were talking about expansion, they were talking about, well, first they were talking about moving teams, Memphis or somebody like that. But now they went to the expansion. They said Vegas or Seattle. So that night, I wish it was on a Friday though, but that night in Seattle, you know, if he was there, he should have saw that the need of a team there, because you would have a fan base that is ready to go. I mean, maybe he's teasing it so that he can see what the logistics would be. But I think really that the fan base and the new arena, they've proven themselves like, this is what we got, this is the product. Like, it's almost like we had to prove ourselves to see if we really wanted one. And so we got a team here. We got an exhibition game here. We got the fans here. We got everybody that came out for it. You got people who were just, I didn't even recognize half those people. Those people that were young kids are now in the stands as adults. Yeah. And so it was so electrifying to the point, like, it was a feel good. Like, you wanted the night not to end. If the game went into overtime, people would have stayed and got drunk and got happier and got whatever they wanted out of that night. But at the same time, I don't know if a team came there. I mean, I would definitely love it, because Seattle is a city, and I even talked to some of the players that are been around. Kevin Durant says like he loves Seattle, and players miss going to Seattle a great deal. Now I don't know what the magnet is for everybody there, but Seattle is a cool place because some people went to shop, some people went to eat, some went to the Pikes Market. I mean, it's so many diverse things there to do. It's different I think it's so different from any other city in the NBA. So I wouldn't mind going back up there. I'm not going up there blindly to move back if they say, like, you know, we're waiting for a team. No, I'll see what develops. But I do still have some ties there, still have a place there, and sneak in and sneak out. Your boy Fran sees me a little bit. My best friend's still up there, Bruce. So it's so much connectivity there. I always go back.
Do you would you want to be involved with? Let's say the Sonics come back and they get an expansion team. Would you want to be involved? I mean, you've been in basketball your whole life, or are you happy doing what you're doing at the league level?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't mind being involved. I mean, I've done so many things within the NBA. They told me if I wanted to coach and learn about player personnel, I had to go do a little bit of coaching. So I coached with Dale Harris in the D League at the time. It was called the D League. I did radio. I did things like this with you, and did some coaching within the coaching and the teaching of the NBA plans and all they have for the players who wanted to be involved in coaching. And I don't know if I'm a coach, to tell you the truth. I can coach little kids and scream, and give them candy and tell them to shut up or something like that. But I can't talk to their parents. But as far as coaching, it's not me. But I'm more behind the scenes of player personnel, because that's what I really wanted to do. But there's so many guys vying for, if you don't make yourself known to knowing what to the people that to hire, your case is lost. So I just wanted to be involved. But if Seattle ever had a chance and I had an opportunity, I would sit down for an interview just like anybody else, and not expect anything from anybody, no handout, but work for it and then get acclimated again within the community.
Well, at the very minimum, having a team back here would mean we get to see you from time to time, and coming up, and all of you guys from that great era of Sonics basketball. It's still amazing to me how long the team's been gone, but it feels like we're hopefully moving in the right direction. It's great to catch up with you, Sam. I'm glad you're doing so well, and you look good. I'm glad you stayed awake after your long flight in for the show from Albania. You're an absolute icon up here, and you'll be recognized and saluted when the Sonics come back by a fan base that won't forget everything that you've done. I'll guarantee you that. I appreciate it, man.
Well, that goes back to what Larry Bird said. You only got to make one to be a difference. So
that's right.
But I had longevity within the community. I respected it. I respected the people I saw and got to know. Signing everybody's whatever garment or piece of paper or chapstick or whatever. I mean, it was fun, and I had a good time, and it was probably one of the best experiences of my career, going to a place like that. And there's a reason why I got traded to Seattle, and you find out the reasons later on in life. But I definitely had a good time and getting to know all of you and the community itself.
Well, I'll say I'm glad my path crossed with you, because you're a fun guy and a great guy, fun guy to watch on the floor. And maybe if there's one more 3 left, they'll throw a jersey on you and stick it. Look at Perk. He's out there. He's playing one more game.
Slow down. Slow down.
Sam, thanks for the time. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
All right, man. Thank you.
Sam Perkins, our guest on Iconic Sonics. Our show brought to you by Rise Above, Epic Seats, Swinomish Casino and Lodge, Dick's Drive-In Restaurants, Simply Seattle, and the Edgewater Hotel. You can get more information on past and future shows at iconicsonics.com. I'm Mike Gastineau. See you next time.